The Viking Age, spanning from the 9th to 11th centuries, marked a transformative period in Northern European history. During this era, the Scandinavian peoples, primarily from Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, embarked on remarkable maritime expeditions that would shape their culinary traditions and food preservation methods. The harsh Nordic environment played a crucial role in developing Viking food culture. The landscape was characterized by rugged coastlines, dense forests, and rocky terrain, while the climate featured long, cold winters and relatively short growing seasons. These challenging conditions forced Vikings to become masters of adaptation, developing sophisticated methods for food preservation and storage. Scandinavian geography significantly influenced Viking dietary patterns. The extensive coastline provided abundant access to fish and seafood, while the dense forests offered opportunities for hunting game and gathering wild berries and mushrooms. The rocky terrain, though challenging for agriculture, supported the grazing of livestock, particularly sheep, goats, and cattle. The Vikings' maritime expertise was intrinsically linked to their food culture. Their advanced shipbuilding techniques and navigation skills enabled them to conduct raids and establish trade routes, which introduced new ingredients and culinary practices to their society. These expeditions required careful food planning and preservation methods to sustain crews during long voyages. The technological aspects of Viking food culture were equally sophisticated. They developed specialized tools for hunting and fishing, including various spears, hooks, and nets. Their food preservation techniques were remarkably advanced, encompassing smoking, drying, salting, and fermentation methods. These preservation practices were essential not only for surviving harsh winters, but also for sustaining long-distance maritime expeditions. Clothing played a vital role in food procurement. Vikings wore warm, practical wool garments that allowed them to fish and hunt in cold conditions. Their clothing was often treated with animal fats to enhance water resistance, crucial for fishing and maritime activities. The wool came from their sheep, which were also vital food sources, demonstrating the interconnected nature of Viking textile and food production. The Vikings' understanding of their environment extended to food storage solutions. They constructed specialized storage facilities, including cold cellars and smokehouses, to preserve food throughout the year. These structures were essential components of Viking settlements and demonstrated their architectural ingenuity in addressing food preservation challenges. This period of maritime expansion and colonization not only transformed the Viking diet, but also influenced the culinary traditions of the lands they explored and settled. Through their raids and trading activities, Vikings encountered new ingredients and cooking methods, which they incorporated into their own food culture, creating a dynamic and evolving culinary tradition that would influence Northern European cuisine for centuries to come. If you are passionate about the Middle Ages and want to embark on this historical journey with us, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the Medieval Archives channel so you don't miss any fascinating content. In Viking society, the roles surrounding food procurement and preparation were clearly defined, with each member playing a vital part in the community's survival. The young Viking hunter-fishermen represented the backbone of food acquisition, venturing out in all weather conditions to secure sustenance for their community. These skilled individuals mastered both land and sea hunting techniques, often starting their training from early childhood under the guidance of experienced warriors and hunters. The matriarch held one of the most respected positions in Viking household food culture. These women were not merely cooks but master preservationists and household managers who held the knowledge of crucial food preparation and preservation techniques passed down through generations. Their expertise extended beyond basic cooking to include the complex arts of fermentation, smoking, and drying foods. They understood the delicate balance of preservatives and seasonings needed to maintain food stores throughout the harsh winter months. Merchants played a fascinating role in Viking food culture, acting as crucial links between different worlds. These traders, often traveling vast distances along established Viking routes, brought exotic spices, dried fruits, and new ingredients from distant lands. They introduced items like saffron, pepper, and foreign grains, which gradually became integrated into Viking cuisine. These merchants also served as cultural ambassadors, sharing new preparation techniques and recipes from different regions. Harald Fairhair, who ruled approximately from 872 to 930 CE, significantly influenced Viking food culture through his unification of Norway. His reign marked a period of increased organization in food distribution and trading systems. Under his rule, larger settlements developed, leading to more sophisticated food storage facilities and organized hunting grounds. Harold's court became known for its elaborate feasts, setting standards for ceremonial dining that influenced Norse culture for generations. The true antagonist in Viking food culture was the harsh winter season and its accompanying food scarcity. This annual challenge forced Vikings to develop innovative solutions for food preservation and storage. The winter months, which could last up to 6 months in the northernmost regions, tested even the most well-prepared communities. This seasonal adversity drove the development of sophisticated food preservation techniques and shaped the entire Viking approach to food gathering, preparation, and storage. Winter scarcity influenced every aspect of Viking life, from their agricultural practices to their raiding patterns. Communities had to carefully plan their food stores, calculating precisely how much would be needed to sustain them through the dark months. This challenge led to the development of various preservation methods and the creation of communal storage systems, where successful hunting and fishing expeditions during warmer months could benefit the entire community during times of scarcity. The interaction between these key figures, the hunter-fisherman, the matriarch, the merchant, and the nobility, created a complex food culture that was both practical and ceremonial. Each role was essential for community survival, and their combined efforts helped Viking society thrive in challenging conditions. Through their various expertise and contributions, these figures shaped not only Viking food culture, but also influenced the broader development of Northern European cuisine and food preservation techniques that would persist long after the Viking Age. The fundamental theme of survival and adaptation through food defines Viking culture, reflecting their remarkable ability to thrive in one of Europe's most challenging environments. The Vikings' relationship with food went far beyond mere sustenance. It represented their ingenuity, resilience, and cultural identity in the face of extreme environmental challenges. The central conflict of maintaining a nutritious diet in harsh climatic conditions shaped every aspect of Viking society. This struggle was particularly evident during the winter months when fresh food became scarce, and communities relied heavily on preserved stores. The challenge was not simply about having enough food, but ensuring that preserved foods retained sufficient nutritional value to prevent diseases like scurvy and malnutrition, which were constant threats during the long, dark winters. Hunting and fishing formed the cornerstone of Viking food procurement strategies. The Vikings developed sophisticated hunting techniques for both land and sea. At sea, they employed various fishing methods, from simple line fishing to complex net systems that could capture large quantities of fish. On land, they hunted everything from small game to larger animals like elk and bear, using specialized weapons and tracking techniques. These activities required intimate knowledge of animal behavior, weather patterns, and seasonal changes. The Vikings' preservation techniques were remarkably advanced for their time. They developed multiple methods to extend food longevity, each suited to different types of ingredients. Smoking was particularly important for fish and meat preservation, with specially designed smokehouses being a common feature in Viking settlements. Fermentation was another crucial technique, used not only for preserving food, but also for creating new food products with enhanced nutritional values. The Vikings also mastered the arts of drying, salting, and pickling, often combining these methods to ensure maximum food preservation. Trade and ingredient exchange played a vital role in diversifying the Viking diet and ensuring survival. Viking trade routes extended far beyond Scandinavia, reaching as far as the Mediterranean and the Middle East. These trading networks brought essential ingredients like salt, which was crucial for food preservation, as well as luxury items like spices, wines, and exotic fruits. The exchange of ingredients also led to the exchange of preservation techniques and cooking methods, enriching Viking culinary practices. The Vikings developed sophisticated food storage systems to address their preservation challenges. They built specialized storage facilities, including underground cellars that maintained consistent cool temperatures and elevated storehouses that protected food from moisture and pests. These structures were carefully designed to maximize food preservation while minimizing spoilage. The combination of hunting, preservation, and trade created a complex food system that required careful management and planning. Communities had to calculate their food needs months in advance, ensuring sufficient stores for winter, while also maintaining enough seeds and breeding stock for the following year. This planning required sophisticated knowledge of food preservation techniques, storage capabilities, and nutritional needs. Success in maintaining food security often meant the difference between survival and disaster for Viking communities. This pressure drove continuous innovation in food procurement and preservation techniques. The Vikings' ability to adapt their food practices to extreme conditions while maintaining nutritional adequacy was a remarkable achievement that contributed to their success as a civilization. The legacy of these survival strategies continues to influence Nordic cuisine and food preservation techniques today. Many traditional preservation methods developed by the Vikings are still used in modern Scandinavian cooking, and their understanding of how to maintain food security in harsh conditions offers valuable lessons for contemporary food preservation and storage practices. This complex interplay between survival needs, environmental challenges, and technological innovation shaped not only Viking food culture, but also their entire society, demonstrating how central food was to their way of life and their success as a people. Viking daily life revolved around a highly structured food routine that reflected both their social hierarchy and survival needs. Their daily diet was carefully planned to provide sustained energy for their demanding lifestyle while making efficient use of available resources. The Viking day typically began at dawn with a hearty breakfast consisting of porridge made from various grains, predominantly oats and barley. This morning meal often included smoked fish, particularly herring or cod, which provided essential proteins and fats needed for the day's labor. Leftover stews from the previous evening might also be consumed at breakfast, following the Viking principle of minimizing food waste. The midday meal was substantial and usually featured thick, nourishing soups or stews. These dishes commonly contained a mixture of vegetables such as cabbage, onions, and turnips, combined with whatever meat was available, be it beef, pork, or game meat. The stews were often seasoned with foraged herbs and thickened with grains, providing a filling meal that sustained workers through the afternoon. Evening meals were the most varied and socially significant. These typically featured the day's fresh catches or hunted meats, accompanied by bread and seasonal vegetables. Fish was a staple, particularly in coastal settlements, while inland communities relied more heavily on domesticated animals and game meat. The evening meal was also when social hierarchies were most evident in food distribution and seating arrangements. The social structure of Viking society was clearly reflected in their food culture. Family chieftains held significant control over food production and distribution, making decisions about hunting expeditions, crop planting, and food storage. Their position at the top of the social hierarchy was reinforced through their control of food resources and their ability to host feasts, which were important social events in Viking culture. Women played a crucial role in Viking food culture, despite the patriarchal nature of their society. They were the primary custodians of food preparation and preservation knowledge, skills that were passed down through generations. Their expertise in smoking, drying, and fermentation techniques was essential for community survival, particularly during the harsh winter months. Women also managed the daily distribution of food within households and were responsible for brewing ale and mead, important beverages in Viking society. The distribution of food in Viking society was notably unequal and closely tied to social status. Warriors and nobles received the choicest cuts of meat and larger portions, while servants and slaves subsisted on simpler fare. This inequality was particularly evident during feasts and celebrations, where seating arrangements and food quality clearly denoted social standing. The Vikings developed sophisticated food preservation techniques that were essential for survival. They excelled in smoking fish and meat, using various types of wood to create different flavors. Their fermentation methods were particularly advanced, producing preserved foods that could last through long winters. They also mastered the art of drying foods, taking advantage of wind and sun when available, and developed effective salting techniques for both meat and fish. Their food culture was adaptable and innovative, incorporating new ingredients and techniques as they encountered them through trade and raiding. This adaptability was crucial for their survival and expansion across different territories, each with its own unique challenges and resources. This profound understanding of food procurement, preservation, and preparation, combined with their complex social structure around food distribution, showcases the sophistication of Viking society and their remarkable ability to thrive in challenging environments. Which of these Viking food preservation techniques surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Medieval Archives to join us on our next historical exploration. The history of Viking food culture was marked by transformative events that shaped their culinary traditions and survival strategies. Maritime expeditions stood as pivotal moments that revolutionized their approach to food preparation and preservation. Before each voyage, extensive preparation was required, often taking months of careful planning and food preservation efforts. Maritime expedition preparation involved intricate food calculations. Ships' crews needed approximately 3,000 calories per day per person, requiring careful planning for journeys that could last weeks or months. The food preparation process began months before departure, with communities working together to smoke meat, dry fish, and prepare hardtack bread that could withstand long periods at sea. These preparations often involved entire settlements, with women leading the preservation efforts while men gathered and hunted additional supplies. The raids themselves became unexpected catalysts for culinary evolution. While historical accounts often focus on the violence and plunder of Viking raids, these expeditions also served as remarkable opportunities for culinary exchange. Vikings encountered new ingredients, cooking methods, and preservation techniques in the lands they raided. They discovered new grains in England, different preservation methods in the Mediterranean, and exotic spices in the East. These discoveries dramatically influenced their traditional food practices. Vikings demonstrated remarkable adaptability in their food practices during long voyages. They learned to fish from their ships, supplementing their preserved provisions with fresh catches. They developed techniques for cooking aboard their vessels, using simple fires contained in clay-lined boxes. Their ability to adapt recipes to available ingredients became crucial for survival, particularly when traditional provisions ran low or when they encountered unfamiliar food sources in new territories. Winter scarcity represented one of the most challenging aspects of Viking food culture. Despite careful planning and sophisticated preservation techniques, the winter months often brought severe food shortages. These periods of scarcity led to significant social tensions, as communities struggled to distribute dwindling resources fairly. The winter months tested not only their preservation methods, but also their social cohesion. Competition for food resources frequently led to conflicts between settlements. Access to fishing grounds, hunting territories, and grazing lands became sources of tension and sometimes violence. These conflicts influenced settlement patterns and led to the development of complex social agreements regarding resource sharing and territory rights. Some communities established formal treaties about fishing rights and hunting grounds, creating early examples of resource management systems. Long-distance voyages presented unique challenges in food preservation. The combination of moisture, salt air, and varying temperatures could quickly spoil even carefully preserved foods. Vikings developed innovative solutions, such as storing food in sealed barrels and creating specialized storage areas in their ships. They learned to layer different preservation methods, combining smoking, drying, and salting to create more resistant food products. One particularly significant turning point came with the discovery of new preservation techniques during their expansionary period. Contact with other cultures led to the adoption of new methods, such as honey-based preservation learned from Celtic peoples and new salting techniques from Mediterranean traders. These innovations dramatically improved their ability to preserve food for longer periods and enhanced the flavor of preserved foods. The Vikings' response to these challenges demonstrated remarkable innovation. They developed new types of containers specifically designed for long-term food storage, experimented with different wood types for smoking foods, and created new recipes that maximized the use of preserved ingredients. Their solutions to food preservation challenges influenced European food culture for centuries to come. Archaeological evidence reveals how these events and challenges shaped Viking settlements. Storage houses became increasingly sophisticated, with specialized areas for different preservation methods. The discovery of storage pits lined with clay and stone shows their growing understanding of how to protect food from moisture and pests. These archaeological findings provide valuable insights into how Viking communities adapted to food-related challenges over time. The impact of these events and challenges extended beyond their immediate time, influencing Nordic food culture for generations. Many of their preservation techniques and adapted recipes became the foundation of traditional Scandinavian cuisine. Their solutions to food scarcity and preservation challenges continue to inspire modern food preservation methods and sustainable food practices. These historical events and challenges shaped not only Viking food culture, but also their entire society. Their responses to these challenges demonstrated the remarkable resilience and adaptability that characterized Viking culture, contributing to their successful expansion and enduring influence on European history. The cultural and intellectual aspects of Viking food traditions were deeply interwoven with their social practices, religious beliefs, and technical knowledge. Among these elements, their mastery of fermented beverages held particular significance in Viking society and culture. Mead, the legendary fermented honey drink, stood as the most revered beverage in Viking culture. The production of mead was considered both an art and a sacred practice, often associated with wisdom and poetry in Norse mythology. According to legend, the mead of poetry bestowed the gift of poetic eloquence upon those who drank it. The brewing process required precise knowledge of honey-to-water ratios and fermentation times, typically taking several months to complete. Different varieties of mead were produced, some flavored with herbs, berries, or spices, each serving specific cultural or ceremonial purposes. Viking beer brewing represented another sophisticated aspect of their beverage culture. They crafted alesh using locally grown barley and wild hops, developing distinct recipes that varied by region and season. The brewing process was typically overseen by women, who held the knowledge of proper fermentation techniques and ingredient combinations. These alesh played crucial roles in religious ceremonies, social gatherings, and daily nutrition, as they provided essential calories and nutrients while also being safer to drink than water in many cases. The Vikings developed remarkably sophisticated food preparation techniques that demonstrated their deep understanding of preservation science. Their smoking methods were particularly advanced, utilizing different types of wood to create varying flavors and preservation qualities. Pine and oak were commonly used for meat smoking, while softer woods like apple or cherry were preferred for fish, creating more delicate flavors. Smoking houses were carefully designed with proper ventilation systems to ensure optimal preservation while preventing oversmoking. Fermentation emerged as a crucial preservation technique that extended beyond beverages. Vikings fermented fish, meat, and vegetables, creating products that could last through long winters while maintaining nutritional value. Skyr, a type of fermented dairy product similar to yogurt, became a staple of their diet. The fermentation process required careful temperature control and specific bacterial cultures, knowledge that was passed down through generations. Sun and wind drying techniques showcased the Vikings' understanding of natural preservation methods. They constructed specialized drying racks that maximized airflow while protecting food from rain and pests. Fish was often split and dried to create stockfish, a protein-rich food that could last for years. They also dried fruits, herbs, and grains, developing methods to prevent mold growth during the drying process. Banquets and feasts played central roles in Viking social and political life. These gatherings, known as Vesla, served multiple purposes beyond mere celebration. They reinforced social bonds, demonstrated wealth and power, and provided opportunities for important political discussions and negotiations. The seating arrangement at these feasts followed strict protocols, with the most honored guests seated closest to the host. The types and quantities of food and drink served often reflected the status of both host and guests. The ritual sharing of food and drink held deep cultural significance. The passing of drinking horns during feasts followed specific ceremonial patterns, often accompanied by toasts to gods and ancestors. These shared drinking rituals, known as minni, strengthened community bonds and honored important figures in Viking society. The act of sharing food was considered sacred, and refusing to share food with guests was viewed as a serious social transgression. Food preparation and consumption were also closely tied to religious practices. Certain foods were associated with specific gods. For example, boar meat was connected to Freyr, while fish was associated with Njrr. Religious festivals often featured specific traditional dishes, and food offerings to the gods were common practices. The preparation of these ceremonial foods followed strict guidelines, and was often accompanied by specific rituals or prayers. The Vikings' understanding of food preservation and preparation techniques represented a significant intellectual achievement. They developed complex systems for timing fermentation processes, understanding the effects of different woods for smoking, and recognizing optimal conditions for drying foods. This knowledge was carefully preserved and transmitted through generations, often through oral traditions and hands-on teaching. The cultural significance of these food traditions extended beyond mere sustenance. Food preparation and sharing became means of expressing cultural identity, maintaining social relationships, and connecting with their religious beliefs. These practices created a rich cultural heritage that influenced not only Nordic cuisine, but European food culture as a whole. Through their sophisticated understanding of food preparation and preservation, combined with rich cultural traditions surrounding food and drink, the Vikings created a complex and enduring culinary legacy. Their methods and traditions continue to influence modern Nordic cuisine and provide insights into the deep connections between food, culture, and community in medieval Scandinavian society. Viking trade routes and cultural exchanges significantly shaped their food culture, creating a dynamic culinary tradition that incorporated influences from numerous civilizations. These interactions transformed Viking cuisine from a purely regional practice into a sophisticated fusion of Northern European and international food traditions. The extensive Viking trade network stretched from North America to the Middle East, creating opportunities for diverse culinary exchanges. Their eastern trade routes, particularly through the Russian rivers to Constantinople, introduced them to exotic spices like cinnamon, cardamom, and saffron. These precious commodities not only enhanced their cooking, but also became valuable trade items themselves. The Silk Road connections, though indirect, brought Asian influences to Viking cuisine through intermediary traders. Mediterranean trade connections particularly influenced Viking preservation techniques. Contact with Southern European cultures introduced them to new methods of olive oil preservation and winemaking. While grape cultivation was impossible in their climate, Vikings learned to appreciate and trade wine, which became a prestigious beverage among their nobility. They also adopted Mediterranean dried fruit preservation techniques, adapting them to local berries and fruits. The Viking settlements in Britain and Ireland led to significant Celtic influences on their food culture. From the Celts, they learned new methods of dairy processing, particularly cheese-making techniques that differed from their traditional practices. Celtic influence also introduced them to different grain processing methods and new varieties of bread making. The integration of Celtic herbs and leafy vegetables enriched their culinary repertoire. Frankish influences, particularly in brewing techniques, transformed Viking beverage production. The Franks' advanced knowledge of beer brewing, including the use of hops as a preservative, was gradually adopted by Viking brewers. This technical exchange improved the quality and shelf life of their Alesh and contributed to the development of distinctive Nordic brewing traditions. The Vikings' interaction with Slavic peoples in Eastern Europe introduced them to new fermentation techniques. Slavic methods of vegetable fermentation, particularly cabbage and root vegetables, provided Vikings with additional ways to preserve food for winter months. These techniques proved especially valuable in their settlements across Eastern Europe. Agricultural practices were also significantly influenced by external contacts. Viking settlers learned new farming techniques from established agricultural communities, adapting these methods to their own challenging climate. They adopted new crop varieties and farming tools, gradually expanding their agricultural capabilities beyond traditional Nordic staples. The exchange of cooking utensils and equipment with other cultures led to innovations in Viking food preparation. Iron cookware from Celtic and Frankish regions, for example, allowed for more sophisticated cooking methods than their traditional clay pots. New types of ovens and cooking hearths, inspired by continental European designs, were incorporated into Viking households. The influence of Christian missionaries gradually affected Viking food customs, particularly regarding fasting practices and dietary restrictions. This religious influence introduced new patterns of food consumption and contributed to the diversification of fish preservation techniques, as fish became increasingly important during Christian fasting periods. The Viking settlement in Iceland and Greenland required them to adapt their food practices to even harsher conditions, leading to innovations in preservation techniques. These settlements became laboratories for food preservation methods, developing unique approaches to storing and preparing food in extreme environments. These external influences not only enriched Viking cuisine, but also demonstrated their remarkable adaptability. Their willingness to adopt and adapt foreign culinary practices while maintaining their core food traditions created a resilient and diverse food culture. This cultural exchange laid the foundation for many traditional Nordic food practices that persist to this day. The legacy of these interactions continues to influence modern Scandinavian cuisine, particularly in its emphasis on preservation techniques and the creative use of local ingredients combined with international influences. The Viking period of extensive trade and cultural exchange essentially created the framework for the diverse and sophisticated food culture that characterizes the Nordic regions today. The Viking dietary legacy extends far beyond its historical context, profoundly influencing modern Nordic cuisine and contributing valuable insights into sustainable food practices. Their innovative approaches to food preservation and preparation continue to resonate in contemporary culinary traditions, offering lessons in resourcefulness and adaptability. The impact of Viking dietary practices on modern food preservation techniques cannot be overstated. Their methods of smoking, drying, and fermentation have evolved into sophisticated modern preservation processes. The traditional Viking technique of smoking fish, for instance, has developed into the modern cold smoking methods used in producing premium salmon products. Their fermentation practices laid the groundwork for many contemporary Nordic fermented foods, including the popular skyr, which has gained international recognition as a healthy dairy product. Viking culinary adaptability demonstrates remarkable relevance to modern food security challenges. Their approach to maximizing local resources while minimizing waste aligns perfectly with contemporary sustainable food movements. The Viking practice of utilizing every part of an animal, from meat to organs, has found new appreciation in modern, nose-to-tail cooking philosophies. Their seasonal eating patterns and food preservation techniques offer valuable insights for current efforts to reduce food waste and promote sustainable consumption. The influence of Viking food culture on modern Scandinavian cuisine is particularly evident in the new Nordic cuisine movement. This culinary revolution, which began in the early 2000s, draws heavy inspiration from Viking food principles, emphasizing local ingredients, preservation techniques, and seasonal eating. Contemporary Nordic restaurants often feature traditional Viking preservation methods, reimagined with modern technology, creating innovative dishes that honor their historical roots. Modern preservation methods in Scandinavia continue to reflect Viking influences. The traditional gravlax, a method of curing salmon, derives directly from Viking preservation techniques. Contemporary chefs and food producers have refined these methods, incorporating modern food safety standards while maintaining traditional flavors. The Viking practice of fermenting vegetables has experienced a revival, aligning with current interest in probiotic foods and gut health. Environmental adaptation, a hallmark of Viking food culture, offers valuable lessons for addressing current climate change challenges. Their ability to adapt food practices to harsh conditions provides insights for developing resilient food systems. The Viking approach to resource management, including their sophisticated storage solutions and waste minimization techniques, remains relevant for modern sustainability efforts. The Viking dietary legacy also extends to communal dining practices. Their emphasis on shared meals and food-centered gatherings continues to influence Scandinavian social customs. The modern Scandinavian practice of communal dining and food sharing during celebrations directly descends from Viking feast traditions. In terms of nutritional wisdom, Viking dietary practices demonstrated remarkable understanding of balanced nutrition. Their combination of proteins, fermented foods, and seasonal vegetables provided a surprisingly well-rounded diet. Modern nutritional science has validated many aspects of their food choices, particularly the benefits of fermented foods and omega-rich fish. The Viking approach to food storage and preservation has influenced modern food security strategies. Their methods of creating food reserves and managing seasonal scarcity offer valuable insights for contemporary food distribution systems. The Viking practice of community food storage and distribution provides models for modern food security initiatives. Their legacy in beverage production continues to influence modern brewing and fermentation practices. Contemporary craft breweries often draw inspiration from Viking brewing techniques, experimenting with traditional ingredients and methods. The revival of mead production in recent years directly connects to Viking beverage traditions. The survival strategies developed by Vikings through their food practices demonstrate the crucial role of dietary adaptation in cultural resilience. Their success in harsh environments through clever food management offers valuable lessons for modern societies facing environmental challenges. This historical legacy reveals how food practices can shape the survival and adaptation of cultures. The Vikings' ability to develop sophisticated food systems while maintaining cultural identity demonstrates the vital role of food in cultural preservation and adaptation. Looking forward, The Viking food legacy continues to inspire innovation in sustainable food practices, preservation techniques, and community-based food systems. Their example shows how traditional wisdom can inform modern solutions to contemporary food challenges. As we face current global food security and sustainability challenges, the Viking approach to food, characterized by resourcefulness, adaptability, and community-oriented practices, offers valuable insights for developing resilient and sustainable food systems for the future. Would you like to learn more about how Viking food traditions are being adapted in modern kitchens? Join our community at the Medieval Archives by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Don't miss our upcoming episodes exploring more fascinating aspects of medieval life.